Hi friends, welcome to Code Jana, and in this video we are going to implement Flask-Login library to handle user sessions in our Flask app. Okay, so let's get to it. Now in our last video we had encrypted our plain text password, so I really hope that you have watched the earlier video. So let's begin adding our Flask-Login library. Alright, so I'm going to close this server from Ctrl+C. Alright, and now we are going to install Flask-Login library. So that's just pip install flask-login. Alright, so after doing this, it happens in 3 steps. First of all, we are going to initialize Flask-Login from our init.py file, as we have done with Bcrypt and our SQLAlchemy. After that, we are going to make some changes in our models.py file. And finally, we are going to edit our routes.py file to reflect those changes. Alright, so let's begin doing them. Alright, so first we are going to import LoginManager from Flask-Login. So that's from Flask_Login import LoginManager, this class. Alright, and then we are going to instantiate that class. So let's say login_manager equals LoginManager class. And again, we are going to pass this app as the argument here, this one, the Flask app. Alright, so next we are going to change our models.py file to ensure that LoginManager logs in the user and logs out the user. To implement Flask-Login in our app, it is really simple, and for this one I'm going to open the documentation of Flask-Login to show you how these documentations look and how you can configure your app according to the examples given in these documentations. So let's type Flask-Login and this first result. And now as you can see here, we have configuring your application link. So we have already instantiated LoginManager. After that, we are going to implement this particular function with a decorator LoginManager so that LoginManager can handle the user sessions in our app. So I'm just going to copy this whole function from here and just paste it before creating our class. And remember, we do not have a LoginManager variable here. So just like we imported this DB, we are going to import the LoginManager variable that we have instantiated in init.py. So this one. Alright, so let's get back to models.py. Alright, so currently it is going to work. We don't need to do anything else. However, I have seen that sometimes this query return user_id does not work sometimes. Yes, for that you need the complete query to get the user ID. So we are going to change this to the proper SQLAlchemy user query. So user.query.get user_id. So that's done. Our LoginManager function is complete. Now let's get back to the documentation. So the user loader method is going to have these 4 classes already embedded in it. However, to activate it, we need to add user mixin class. As you can see here, to implement this class, you need to inherit it from user mixin. And which class is inheriting the user information? This class. So it is inheriting from db.model so that it can create all of these models in our table. This one will also inherit from user mixin, as the documentation says, to make implementing a user class easier. So user class, I'm pointing it out especially because this is the user class that we have created. So you can inherit from user mixin, and that's exactly what we did. However, we need to import it from Flask_Login. So let's do that. From Flask_Login, import user mixin. So it was this easy to create a login method that can handle user sessions. And now we can implement the things that we have discussed in the earlier video, that we want the user to be logged in, logged out, and based on that status, we can restrict the pages so that the logged in user can see some things and the logged in user cannot access some pages. I'm going to run my server. So python run.py. So currently if we click on account page, it is accessible, which is absurd because we want this page to be restricted. We want it to be there, but only accessible after someone is logged in. So I hope the concept is clear, and now let's implement that thing. So first of all, we are going to implement the login and logout functionality. So click on routes.py file, and then in our login function, we are going to log in the user after verifying this information. So this conditional. So right after this, we are going to log that user in. Now, to access that functionality, we are going to import login user so that we can log the user in. All right. So from Flask_Login, we are going to import login_user. And just as that, we want to use logout user as well. So let's also import, because we are going to be using it just after implementing login. So logout_user, and also we are going to implement some things which are accessible by the current user. So the user which is actually logged in. So we are also going to import current user function here. So current_user. All right. So let's hop over to our login function. And now after we have verified that the user exists and the passwords match, we are going to access the login user. So login_user. All right. So now in the arguments, we are going to specify the user which is generated from this query. So the email that the user entered. All right. And by default, this will fall only after the user is available and the password have matched. So we don't need the password argument. We just need the information presented by this user query. So if you have any doubt about this, then please do comment in the section below. All right, so with that, a user session has been created. All right, so now that the user is logged in, how about we log out the user? So it's really simple. We are going to access the app decorator again, access the route again, and we are going to implement a logout route. Since this is not going to be a form, it is not going to accept any methods here. So we are just going to drop into this function, the logout function, and then implement the logout method from Flask-Login. So we have already imported that logout_user. So let's just say logout_user, and we have called that function as well. Now since we have passed the user information in login user function, we don't need to specify that in this argument because it already knows what user is currently logged in. And now after the user has successfully logged out, we want them to be redirected back to the login screen so that if for some reason they have logged out, they can log back in. All right, so let's do that. Let's return the user with a redirect of URL for the login function. All right, that's all we need to do. So our login and logout routes are created and they are working flawlessly. Now how about we test it? So I'm going to run our server again. Great. And now we're going to click on this login button, and we have a user krishna@codejana.com with password of codejana. So login successful for krishna@codejana.com. Now let's click on login again. Okay, so it is redirecting us to this login page again, even when we are already logged in. So let's implement that functionality that if we are logged in, then it should not show us this page. So in our login URL, this right here, even before instantiating the form, we are going to check whether the user is currently logged in or not. So it is very simple. We have already imported current user function. All right, so let's drop down. Now let's start the conditional. If the current user is authenticated, so is_authenticated, then we are going to return the user to their account page. So return and then redirect function and then URL function, URL for this account function. All right, so let's take a look here. So this function right here. So how about we test it? Let's start our server. Great, let's open the page. Now, since we are not currently logged in, we are going to log in. So that's Krishna@CodeJana. Okay, so login successful. All right, so let's try clicking on this login button. All right, so we are not seeing that login form. We are successfully being redirected to account page. And just so it's more clear, let's click on home. And now let's click on login. So yes, our conditional is working. The sessions are working as well because that session is checking whether current user is authenticated or not. So we are going to implement the same thing in the sign up page as well, because after being logged in, why do we need to see this page again? So we are going to implement the same functionality in our register function as well. So it is just as simple, just copy this one and just paste it right before this form instantiation. All right, so let's paste it. Now if someone clicks on that sign up button after they are logged in, then they should also be redirected to their account page. So both of our links are working. Now let's refresh this page to reflect the changes, and now we'll click on the sign up button, and again we are being redirected to account. Since we don't have a logout button ready, we are just going to move to logout URL. So I'm going to show you this /logout. So after our port number and /, we are going to write logout. All right, so we have been redirected to this login page as we have redirected the user with this statement. Now let's try clicking on the sign up button. Great. Now the login button. Great. So our functionality is working. Now that's just one step. Now we are going to move ahead. We are going to hide these links after someone has logged in, and the functionality is now clear to you. Check whether the user is authenticated and then hide or show the things that you want. So I'm going to just start the session. So great, we are currently logged in and we are still seeing these links. All right, so now as you can see, this is the navigation bar and these links are appearing there. So we are going to open our layouts.html. In our layouts.html, we have the navigation bar right here. So this is our left side of navigation bar, home, about, and account. And then this is the right side of navigation bar. So we are going to implement that functionality here. So right after this unordered list, we are going to start some conditionals, check whether the user is authenticated, and then hide or show links according to it. So first of all, let's start the conditional. All right, so let's start the if statement. And as you already know that it will start with curly braces and then %sign. So if current_user is authenticated, just that. And if he or she is authenticated, then we do not need to show them the sign up button and login button. So for now, bear with me here. I'm going to close this conditional because sometimes we forget this. So end if. And right after this, we are going to show the buttons that we want. So to speed this up, I'm just going to copy this link here and paste it here. And now we're going to change it up a little. This URL for function should be our logout route. So this logout function, because we want this link to appear when the user is authenticated. And this text should say logout. Great. Now after this, just after this closing link tag, we are going to start our else statement. Else. So what happens if the user is not authenticated? So now we are going to cut both of these statements here and paste it in the else statement block. There we go. So now this particular statement is going to show when the user is not authenticated, and this one when the user is authenticated. I hope that's clear. Now all we need to do is refresh the page. So let's do that. We are currently logged in. All right, let's refresh it. All right, so I have made an error. We are going to fix that error. and there we go. So it seems that we have logged out. Let's log back in. Great. Well, as you can see, that sign up button and login button are gone. Now if we click on this log out button, so now the logout button is gone and sign up button and login button are there. So that's great. So just like that, it is very simple. Now you understand the concept here, how to show something and hide something from the user based on their login activity. Now, right now you can see this account button as well, right? Even after we are not logged in, but now you know how to hide it. So in our first half right here, we can implement the same thing. So after this closing link tag, we can start the conditional, this if statement, and then current underscore user dot is authenticated. And then after this, if they are authenticated, then show this link. Now we do not need an else statement for this one. We can simply close off our if statement. So let's do that. And if. All right, so let's try it out. Okay. Let's log back in, or maybe just refresh the page. Great. So it is hidden and it has not touched the home and about button. In this case, where we wanted the user to see these buttons and not this one, we actually had to do this else statement, because based on this activity, based on this status, we wanted to hide logout or show logout. All right, that's why we needed this else statement. But in our account link, we don't have anything else. See, it makes perfect sense, I hope. All right, so now let's log back in. So that's Krishna@CodeJana. Log back in, and I have typed incorrect password. Great. So now this account page is visible. Okay, now let's access the page via this URL. Let's see if it is accessible. Okay, so it is accessible. Why is that? Because if you do remember, then in our routes.py file, we have implemented this user authentication. Now we need a decorator there to check whether the user is authenticated or not. So let's do that. Just below this route, we need to implement a decorator, which is login required. So let's do that. Login underscore required. Now that login required, it's not something that we have created. It is a property of Flask underscore login. So we are going to import that as well. So let's import login required function. So as you can see, now we have successfully created a page that will only be accessible if a user is logged in. So let's see what happens now. We are going to run our server, and now we are going to refresh this page, and boom, unauthorized. Now this page looks a little ugly. We want a proper error message to what happened, or maybe we want to redirect the user if they are not authenticated. So let's try to log in. And yes, we are logged in. Let's try clicking on it. Let's try homepage and then typing the URL of it. And yes, we are being logged in. So we can do the same thing with other pages as well. For example, you want to hide some pages from the users that only the logged in users can access. And as you know, that private areas in certain websites implement this thing. So you can definitely scale your application further with only Flask-Login library. Alright, so we have implemented Flask-Login successfully. Okay, now before ending this video, I want to show you something. That currently we are getting this page, this unauthorized page with this ugly looking message. What if we want to customize this message, or maybe show them a link to redirect to so that they can register to our website? All right, to use this functionality, we are going to take a look at Flask-Login documentation again. All right, so just as with LoginManager user loader function, we also have this unauthorized handler function, where we can define a function unauthorized and then we can return a response. Okay, so let's see how it looks. In our models.py, just after defining this load user function, we are just going to copy this unauthorized handler completely and paste it and fix these indents. All right, So what we need to change? Well, first of all, let's delete this comment and now return a response. So how about we return a message? So let's return a formatted string and let's say unauthorized access. Please register to access this page. So for now, let's see if it has worked. We're just going to refresh this page and our code is broken. So let's try to run it again. Great, now let's refresh this page. Alright, so as you can see, the old message is gone and this new one has appeared. Okay, so if we can do this, then we can actually redirect the user to our register function as well. By that I mean register page. Alright, so let's do that. Return redirect and then URL underscore for and then register function. Great. Now as you can see, we do not have URL for and redirect imported from Flask. So let's do that. Let's click on routes.py. From the top, we are going to import both redirect and URL for function. So I wanted to show you that in models.py. From Flask, import both redirect and URL for function. Now it must work as we intend it to work. All right, let's see that in action. So let's run our server again. And now let's refresh this page. All right, so we have successfully redirected back to join today. All right, so if someone tries to access our account page, they will be redirected to this one. Okay, so that's one other thing that you can do with this unauthorized handler. And you can customize it to your liking. You can also make a separate page with the information that you want to showcase the user who is not currently registered. There's just so much you can do. Alright, so that is it for this video. In the next one, we're going to take our app one step further. I sincerely hope that you liked it. If not, then please let me know how I can improve my videos. And please do subscribe to Code Jana and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.